Hi, my name is Alex, and in this episode of Magic Missile Minis, I'm going to be doing a Tyranid conversion. I start by grabbing some of the different pieces I'm going to need for this conversion, and I go ahead and score the little attachment piece here on the main body part of the Tyranid, so that I can then go ahead and glue it onto the base, as you can see me doing right here. And I then go ahead and tape it onto one of my little bottles that I use as handles for working on these projects. The first thing I need to do is get rid of the neck of the Tyranid body. I'm not planning on using the Tyranid heads for this project because I find that they're so iconic, it would be difficult to make it look like anything other than a Tyranid. So what I plan on doing instead is giving it a large mouth that is going to be coming out of the torso. I felt as though that would be a good way to make sure that your first thought when you saw this miniature wasn't that it was a Tyranid, and having the large kind of monster mouth fits with the Lovecraftian feel that I'm going for. Once I have hollowed out a little space for where I'm going to put the mouth on the miniature, I can move on to add the gums for the mouth. And for this, I use a couple of my metal round sculpting tools, creating little divots where I'm going to put the teeth. I also go in with some of the metal sculpting tools to add a little bit of texture and refinement to the inside of the mouth as well. Once the green stuff for the gums has fully set, I can start to add the teeth. So, as you can see here, I sculpt a teardrop of green stuff and stick that onto the gum that I had made, and then use my sculpting tools to make that the shape that I want it to be, as well as make sure it's actually attached to the gums. I also wanted to give the creature a nice long tongue, which again goes with the Lovecraftian feel of the monster. So I take a piece of wire and bend that into the shape that I want the tongue to be in, and then I go ahead and add some green stuff to that. While the green stuff hasn't set yet, I can attach it to the mouth where I want it to be, and then similar to how I did it with the teeth, I take a sculpting tool and sculpt that onto the mouth to make sure that it's attached properly. After all the green stuff has set, I move on to take the shoulder bits off of the front little arm sockets of the Tyranid body. And then I can add some green stuff to act as the flesh or skin of this creature, taking one of my rubber sculpting tools and flattening that out. The way that I wanted to transition from the mouth to the more skeletal Tyranid body was by making the skin that is attached to the mouth look like it's almost being drawn and stretched over top of the Tyranid body. So I take these long pieces of green stuff and proceed to stretch those and place those all around the Tyranid body. And using a combination of my rubber sculpting tools and a needle, I start to make the different strands that I added look like they are attached together and being stretched apart from each other. Just slowly making my way down the Tyranid body, adding little bits of green stuff as I go. And despite taking a very long time, you can see here that it leaves a really cool, creepy effect. One of the other things that I wanted to add to the creature was two kind of mandibles on either side of the mouth. And for that, I was planning on using these kind of like claw, saber kind of deals that the Tyranids have, chopping them off of the arms that they are attached to and using just the hands, but making sure to get rid of the thumbs that are attached to these guys to make it look a little bit less like a hand. I can then take some green stuff and put it in the arm socket nearest the mouth that I've made, and use that to attach the mandibles to the rest of the miniature. After which I assemble the rest of the miniature, adding the arms to the other arm sockets that the Tyranids have, as well as adding the leg. And then, to make the transition between the mandibles and the main body of the Tyranid more seamless, I add the same little strips of green stuff over the mandibles that I did on the torso. And with that finished, the sculpt of the miniature is finished and it's ready for painting. And here there's a little turnaround so that you can see the finished sculpt. And here you can see the miniature primed in one uniform black coat. And that kind of gives you a better sense of what these details are actually going to look like once they're painted. And to start the painting process, I add a base coat of a kind of greenish brownish color for all the parts that are more representative of bone. Adding the green is really important so that although these guys are not going to be a green color, they will kind of mix well with the green armor on my Space Marines. And once I've finished the bone color, I then move on to add a purple for all of the fleshy parts of this miniature. Again, although it's not as subtle, the purple is going to mesh well with the bases of the Space Marines that I've had before, since there's always purple on the ground. I then take that same purple and add it into all of these little cracks that are in the Tyranid legs and arms that kind of show a little bit of something gooey. So I paint the gooey bits purple. And once I finish that, I move on to paint with a little bit more of the bone color, getting all the places that I missed. With that finished, I go ahead and I work on some of the highlights on the bone, taking a lighter shade of the color I mixed before and watering it down a little bit so that I can then take a dry brush and blend that out, doing that over and over and over again until I get a nice smooth gradient. Then repeating the process with an even lighter shade of the bone color, really making that highlight pop to the point where it's almost too bright for my liking, because later on I'm going to be putting a wash over this, which is going to bring those highlights back down. Once all the highlights are in place, I work on the shadows, taking a significantly darker shade of the bone color and adding it in all of the recesses. Taking that same dark color and also adding it to the closer parts of the mandibles that I had made. Once again, having it be a little bit watered down so that I can take a dry brush and blend that out to make the transition nice and smooth. However, with this specific instance, I kind of want to leave a little bit of the texture there so that it looks more organic and not unnaturally smooth. After that, I go over the entirety of the bone with a dry brush of my highlight color. This also helps add a little bit of texture and brings highlights to the places that I couldn't with some of the larger areas I had added highlights. I also dry brush a lighter purple onto the fleshy parts that I had added before, and that really helps bring out the texture that I had sculpted onto them with the needle beforehand. I then go ahead and fix up some of the little areas where I had gotten paint where it shouldn't be. I then take a dark brown and add that onto the claws of the miniature. Moving on to the mouth, I add a base coat of a slightly reddish purple to differentiate from the rest of the kind of outer mouth, and add a highlight onto the tongue. After that, I add a brown paint onto all of the teeth, and then dry brush the teeth with a lighter brown. With that done, I add a brown wash over all of the bone areas, being careful to wipe off the brown over where I had added some of the lighter highlights to keep those highlights intact. And once that's done, I add a black wash over the purple parts of the miniature to add some dynamics to that as well. And then to finish the miniature off, I add a glossy wash to the inside of the mouth and the tongue to make it a little bit shiny. And with that detail added, the miniature itself is finished. Thank you so much for watching that video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified whenever I release a new video. Also, don't forget to check out my Patreon using the link in the description, where you can support me as well as grabbing some nice benefits for yourself. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, leave them in the comments below. But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.